Hello and welcome to the Bee Formless Flow-Driven CEO podcast. There, I was about to say good morning, and I'm like, I cannot because it is around 5:30, a little bit after 5:30 p.m. on Monday, in Denver, Colorado, and I'm so thrilled to have Lena Phoenix here on the show. Welcome, Lena.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's always exciting to talk to the future, since I guess it's Tuesday where you are now.
Yeah, it's so funny you bring that up, Lena. I haven't brought that up for a while because I thought the joke was wearing thin. But yeah, you're in the past. I'm in the future, and right now you and I are in the present together, which I absolutely love because it is Tuesday morning here in Melbourne, Australia. It's kind of cool, isn't it, that we can. Yeah, I don't know. It always blows my head off that we're in different times and spaces, but yeah, here we are right now in the same present moment. So. Lena, you have an incredible story and like doing a bit of research, homework on you and then just having a little chat there and I'm like, wow, like what a powerful and like soulful woman you are in terms of you are the co-founder, executive advisor. You're a director on the board of Xero Shoes, Xero with an X, Xero Shoes, and it's a multi-million dollar footwear brand known for its minimalist, barefoot inspired shoes to promote that natural movement. I'm going to come into this because I'm super curious about this. And you launched Zero Shoes back in 2009 with your husband Stephen Sashin. I think that's right. Yeah. And you have helped grow Zero Shoes into a global brand. It's sold in over 50 countries and it blends e-commerce savvy with deep customer trust. You're also a former mortgage broker, and what I believe, obviously very good with maths and very good at explaining numbers, which is always important when you have a successful business as you do. You are an author. You wrote a book called The Heart of a Cult back in 2005, which sounds fascinating. And you also bring that grounded pragmatism and strategic intuition into leadership, in all facets of what you do. But under your guidance and obviously your husband Stephen's, Zero Shoes has become a case study in, transparent communication, inclusive culture, and what is customer-led innovation. And I'm going to throw this in also because I know I've talked a bit, but when you booked in for the pod and I asked, well, what is that one unique experience or insight when it comes to life, leadership, or business? You said transparency is your friend, which is all encompassing in everything about you. So I just want to say, wow. I want to say congratulations. And I would love to hear how it all started. Like you've come out of mortgage broking, you then start a shoe company. It's fascinating. So tell us the journey.
Yeah, it's a bit of a story, but I'm a fourth generation entrepreneur. My father, grandfather, great grandfather. So I grew up around people who had their own businesses, and my husband as did as well. And he's actually never had a job. So some would say he's unemployable. So entrepreneurship is sort of the only path for him. But this started out of a personal passion. My husband has always been very athletic, but so he started doing track and field, particularly sprinting, at the age of 45, and he loved it, but he was getting injured all the time. He was pulling a calf muscle or a hamstring, and he just couldn't figure out how, he was buying all these different shoes and trying all this different stuff. And finally, someone said, have you heard of this book, Born to Run? It's about indigenous people in Mexico who they run as a form of commuting, and they run 50, 60, 70 miles at a time. And they do it either barefoot or in very thin sandals made out of strips of rubber, leather, just what they have around. And they do it well into their elder years. And they don't get the kinds of injuries that we get in the West with all of our fancy shoes. And so he read the book, and it immediately made sense to him that the foot functions best when it's allowed to move the way it was designed. Human beings have been trying to improve on the architecture of the foot through shoes, but the reality is it's one of the most elegantly designed parts of the body. It will support you if you let it and if you get out of its way. And so he started going barefoot. He immediately developed an aware, he was getting blisters. He developed an awareness like, oh, I'm moving, I'm kind of overstriding with my right foot. And he was getting all this feedback that he couldn't get when the shoes were masking um, what he was doing with his feet. And so when he went barefoot, he got the feedback that allowed his body to start
Like
naturally
lit,
correcting.
sorry to interrupt you, but literally barefoot, like literally barefoot running.
Literally barefoot. Yeah, literally barefoot. And um he, I I was like happy for him because he wasn't getting injured anymore. But we had white carpeting and I was like, honey, I really need you to do something because your feet are disgusting. And so and I don't want to have to clean the carpets every 2 months. So he started looking for materials to make a thin sandal inspired by these indigenous people called the Tarahumara in Mexico. And you could only buy, he found some material that was made for shoe repair, for like if you need to have a pair of shoes resoled, but you could only buy it in large quantities. So he ended up getting a bunch of friends to go in on the cost. And after 3 or 4 rounds of making these sandals, the guy who was running the Barefoot Club said, I'm writing a book about barefoot running, and if you put up a website, I'll put you in the book. And he ran home and he told this to me, and he's like, "Isn't this great?" And I was like, "No, this is not great." We were trying to start another business at the time to help local businesses optimize search engines for ranking because that was something that a lot of people needed help with back at that time. And so I was like, honey, we need to focus. We've already started this other business. We need to stay focused on that. And he got all pouty and he said, okay. But then I went to bed and he stayed up all night and built a website. And within, I think, a week, we had our first sale. And it became apparent pretty quickly that there was real demand for what we were doing. People are very unsatisfied with their shoes. They don't want their feet to hurt all the time. And the book Born to Run by Chris McDougall was perfect advertising for us because the big shoe companies, they weren't doing anything minimalist. There were only a few funky options out there. And so because we understood search engine optimization, we were able to rank number one for all of the critical keywords very quickly. And it became apparent this was going to be the business that we were in. So we pivoted from helping others do search engine optimization to helping people discover the fun, freedom, and benefits of natural movement and minimalist footwear.
Wow, wow, what a story. And the fun free, what did you say? Fun free.
The freedom, fun, and benefits of natural movement.
Yeah, I love that for the freedom and the fun and the benefits because yeah,
Yeah.
the fun
It's
piece
like
comes.
it's like being a little kid again. I
Yeah, like
mean,
totally, totally right. Oh my God, what a story though. Like in terms of, again, that lived experience. So your husband's like having all these issues with his feet. He does some exploration and then he actually then has the lived experience to then be able to you to create a product that
yeah, exactly. And
everybody,
it's
yeah.
yeah, and we're not selling a medical device. What we're selling is just something that gets out of the way and allows you to develop your own, a deeper understanding of your own body and your own movement patterns so that you can figure out how you need to move in a pain-free way. Because when you're getting the feedback immediately, if you do something that hurts, your body is going to figure out how to change that because the body doesn't like to do things that hurt it. So if you're slamming your heels into the ground, it's going to be like, no, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'm going to change that. And so, with your business experience, B, you know that running any kind of business is very challenging and difficult. And, we got off to kind of a very fast start. We were not, it didn't really occur to us, 2009, the depths of the Great Recession in the US,
Oh, yeah.
not maybe the best time to start a business, but we were selling a funky do-it-yourself sandal kit for 20 bucks when the, closest thing people could buy was 100 or $120, the funky toe shoes. I don't know if you remember
Yes, I
those.
was about because I was trying to think before when you were talking, and I was like, I don't want to
Yeah,
bring up the brand or whatever, but I think we're pretty clear. But I do remember there was that shoe that had the toe, yeah, but
yeah,
it was still a runner, like if you like, do you know what I mean? Or it was
yeah.
a runner, but you know what I mean? Like I do remember it, and at the time I was like, oh yeah.
Well, and yeah, Stephen jokes that if those shoes actually fit him, we probably never would have started the business. But he has a foot where, his middle toe is longer than his first toe, and those shoes can't accommodate that kind of toe structure. So yeah, so we sold do-it-yourself kits for a few years, and it became apparent when we started. We were buying up all the material our supplier was producing, and we realized we needed to source our own production. And so, yeah, so we got into manufacturing and all those fun and challenging things. But, as you know, all the different parts of running a business will constantly throw challenges at you. But we kept at it because we kept hearing from our customers, you have changed my life. Like these shoes, like I got injured. I was told I was never going to be able to, run again or, play ball again or whatever it was. But we just kept getting these really heartfelt emails from our customers saying, please keep doing what you're doing because, you've given me back part of myself I thought was lost. And so that's really what's kept us going because there are so many footwear companies in the world. There really isn't a need for another one unless you're really changing people's lives. And so there's a real mission behind what we're doing. And I'm glad because it would have been so easy to quit, because it's just hard.
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah. I want to talk about the hard because it is hard. Like, like there's almost like you have that shiny, what's what people see on the outside, but actually what's going on
right.
behind scenes, but closed doors, you're working, it's a lot of hours, you're constantly thinking about it,
Yeah.
you've got a husband and wife partnership. I'm sure that, like there's no break from work.
Mm-mm.
Live together and, you're probably trying to find the spaces to be able to shut work off for a minute, but yet it's your livelihood, like it's everything. And, and you have to, and it takes a lot of courage and belief, I think self-belief as well, in terms of the ability to be able to stick at it especially when the going gets tough. In terms of hard and it sounds like, you had yeah, like you said, you had a fast start. Was there any moments though that you obviously had the fast start, but you were just like, I'm not sure if we can continue with this business? Like, was there any moments like that, or have you had any of those types of moments as part of your
Oh, so
trajectory?
many, so many. I mean, um, when we got our first production of, and nobody would give us financing. It was the middle of recession. People didn't understand what we were doing. Um, and so we put a couple $100,000 on our credit cards to open up manufacturing molds and to buy our first the first custom made outsole for barefoot style running. And when we got our first production, a week or so later, I got an email from a customer saying, hey, she was super sweet too, but the product had torn. We had these little holes on the side and the product had torn. And we ended up finding out that about 10% of that production, they'd been sloppy in terms of how they filled the molds. And so um, the what was supposed to be one of the strongest points of the shoe was very weak on some pairs. And so I got that email and I thought, this is it. We're going bankrupt. Like, because you get the first sign of bad news
So cool.
and you don't know. Like, I didn't know it was 10%. It could have been 100%. Like you don't find out. So, I literally fell on the floor and I was like, I had my hands on my face. I was like, what have we done? What have we done? But, we worked with that customer to find a solution. A few other customers reached out. The thing about selling a do-it-yourself kit, those customers were so great
Yeah.
because they were empowered. There's a superpower in making your own shoes. So, we had customers who were like, hey, wanted to let you know this thing tore, but I just punched another hole and I'm good, but just wanted to let you know in case that's something you want to fix. And we were like, thank you so much. We love you. We are totally fixing that. And so the customers were really along with us on the journey and helped us get through some of those rough spots because the product was so meaningful for them.
And then is that where the transparency comes into it? Like in terms of like, having that ability to for like, I mean, obviously your customers are fully transparent and then you're being transparent back with them. Like where does that come into play? Like, and especially when it comes to like things getting hard and tough, like you can either
Yeah,
hide and you can either like just bury your head down or you can actually just go, like transparency works in so many different ways. It can be when it comes to a client or a customer, but it can also
yeah,
just be just being transparent where it's just like this really sucks at the moment. Like this is hard work. Like, I'm in a
yeah,
really big I'm operating in survival mode. This is not fun versus pretending like, oh, everything's amazing. Because we need
yeah,
more of that, right? We need more of that transparency where it's like, no, it's not a fun time at the moment, but I'm going to stick at it.
yeah. Well, my husband likes to make a joke, when people say, hey, I'm thinking about starting a business, what advice do you have? He'll say, get a government job with a pension. Because, one thing you do not have as an entrepreneur is any kind of stability. And so,
100%.
yeah. And so yeah, transparency, I think I first became conscious of it relative to we had a programmer who was an independent contractor who was our first kind of employee. I mean, and the first month we brought in $60,000 in revenue. He said, "Well, I can see how much money you're making, and I'm clearly not making enough." Now, what he didn't know was that we were not getting paid at all. We had taken on all this debt, and we were spending. We brought in 60,000, but more than 60,000 was going out the door because we were trying to build up our inventory and spending money on advertising and doing all this stuff. So, just being able to have a conversation with him and say, hey, here's what the numbers actually look like, helped me realize that, as people coming in from the outside, they're not going to know, they're not going to understand how the numbers work or what's actually happening. And so, I've read several books on open business management or open book management, sorry. Um, and I really resonate with that idea because I think employees, first of all, they feel valued when you trust them enough to share your financial information with them. And they also, we've set up, we have, for example, we have a quarterly profit share inspired bonus plan. So if there's a profit, a percentage of that gets distributed to our employees. We also have a long-term incentive plan so that if the value of the company grows, vested employees can participate in that. And, for me, helping employees understand how these programs work and how the actions that they engage in on a day-to-day basis impact those numbers and the money that they receive has been really profound. So we have a huge sense of ownership, really strong ownership culture in our employees. And people ask questions and they're like, this doesn't look right. And boy, this seems expensive. And maybe we can do it less expensive, like so that's just been something that has really helped with our help us maintain good employees because they know that we're being honest with them. During the pandemic, nobody knew what was going to happen. In a few short weeks, we lost close to $1 million of our working capital. And we had an $800,000 order from a retailer that was canceled and on product that we'd already bought. And that was just one foot in front of the other. The only thing I can do with my employees is be honest with them about what's going on. So, and everybody was spread to the winds. Everybody was remote. So I just started sending out a newsletter and saying, okay, here's the situation. You know, we're all the senior leadership, we're all taking pay cuts because we're trying really hard not to lay anybody off. We're doing the best we can. You know, we just had this cancellation, but we're going to do this sale. You know, we've lost this, but we're going to do this. And, you know, that, I think that really helped keep the team together and helped, uh, I mean, obviously it was a horrible time for everybody. And, you know, it was especially challenging for example, customer service that wasn't set up to work from home at that point in time and had to
No.
figure it out, you know. So it really started on the employee side. And then in 2017, do you have equity crowdfunding in Australia?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we do. Yeah, 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 absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a new thing where or newer thing where you can sell stocks in growing company that isn't public to people who aren't rich, to just everyday investors. So in the US prior to 2015 or 16, I think you had to be rich to invest in a growing company. But the crowdfunding act changed that. And so um, as you know, we did a crowdfunding raise in 2017 and we raised over $1 million from you know, our fans, followers, and customers. And as a result of that, we actually are required to report our financials publicly twice a year. And some people don't like that, but I think it's fabulous because I really want people to know what's going on. And so it's like we take it really seriously that these people entrusted us with their money,
Yeah,
and we
100%.
want them, yeah, we want them to know we're being good stewards. So, you know, so that's another component of it as well. And then, of course, you know, when you're married to your co-founder, clear communication and transparency is utterly critical. And so we were fortunate that we already had a solid marriage base. We've been together for, um, gosh, 13, 14 years before we started the business. So, um, you know, it certainly tested us, absolutely, but skills that communication skills that we developed for our marriage turned to come in super handy in the co-founder role as well. So yeah, a lot of different ways. And then, yeah, just
It,
being honest.
oh, it always
Oh,
happens when I'm on the pod. I always have this tendency to sneeze. Sorry. Yeah.
I hope you're not allergic to Zoom.
No, 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 no. Just it's just like it's a windy day here today. I
Gotcha.
love all of that. There's a couple of things I want to unpack here, and I have the same, okay, I guess way of operating in terms of I call it good business acumen, and I've always been a massive believer that staff, you know, should have a really good sense of the business and from a business acumen perspective, what I'm talking about here is understanding the financials, you know, how the business is profitable, you know, when it's not performing, you know, because if we just focus on you know, keeping the numbers separate and how the business is operating separate from the staff, there's always kind of,
Yeah.
well, what's going on here? And, you know, I'm not being paid properly or I'm being ripped off or they've got me working here and there. But the more we make them accountable, the more we make them, you know, ownable of the business. They're almost like, you know, little mini small business owners themselves within the business, right? That's how we used to set it up with well, I had it set up with my staff the more they were then engaged, they were more intrinsically motivated. It wasn't just constantly coming and going, I want a pay increase or whatever. I think that's super important. And for me, there's a really great book, and you being an author, from Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who's the godfather of flow, called Good Business, and he talks a lot about this in. I don't know if you've read that book, but it's such a great book. It's like years and years old, but you know, like abundance follows. It's less of like, you know, like you need, yeah, that's like your vision, your values, and you know, abundance follows when you have all those in place. And it's just it just was a great reminder what you were talking about there from, you know, that financial acumen, I call it the business acumen. that's good business. What you are doing, you're practicing good business and having the ability to be as transparent as you can when it comes to, newsletters and when you're not performing or what's, external factors are causing this. I love that culture that you're
Mm.
creating, and I still think that we need more of that in the world we're in right now. There's still very much this top down, keep it away from the staff or the people, and yet this new world order we're in is really requiring, leaders like yourself, like what I'm coaching and consulting in terms of that more soulful, more conscious leadership, still high performing, but then how do we make it so that it is whole versus, it's interconnected. It's the leaders, the team, and the business all interconnected. So I really just wanted to recognize that because I think it's a really important shift that is still very much we've got almost old world way of doing business and operating and then this new way. And then obviously the partnership in terms of I've got a couple of clients and in e-commerce and similar sort of thing. They're in a partnership and it's making sure that they're creating that space around, well, the open communication, but also creating the space to be like, business is here, but we've also got to ensure that we're working on the, and having whether it's date night or whatever to ensure that you've got that, it's almost like active recovery of a relationship, isn't it? So that you're creating that downtime.
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly say that there were probably years where we failed miserably at that separation. There are times when the demands of the business are just, it's like having a baby. Especially if you're selling product in Europe and you're manufacturing product in Asia, it becomes a 24-hour day. And we we've certainly gotten better, but it has been very challenging because when you're bootstrapped, you're under resourced by definition. So you're trying to get, you want to put everything you have into this business. And so you're just trying to squeeze as much out of yourself as you can. And, I think because my husband and I were very much on the same page in terms of what we wanted, what we saw as the potential of the business, and what we felt we needed to happen, that was probably the saving grace because it would have been very different if one of us was kind of dragging our feet, while the other one was plowing ahead. But when you're equally exhausted, it's kind of like, yeah, let's just order some pizza and watch TV because that's the most enjoyable thing I can come up with the energy to do right now.
Do you guys
Um,
take holidays? Like, do you like how do you manage your so that you're not burning out? Like, like that it's that classic entrepreneurial, like
yeah,
fast, 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 like grow, grow, grow,
it's a,
24/7.
it's really a discipline. So we didn't take holidays for a really long time, and um, our anniversary is in October, and so was probably the year or two before the pandemic. I was like, we're just going to die if we don't stop this pace. Like we have to. And it was really nerve-wracking, even to just commit to going up into the mountains. We have these beautiful mountains here in Colorado. They're right there all the time. And we
Oh my
were
God, so
totally ignoring
lucky.
them.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, being there
But,
myself. Yeah.
if you don't go up there, then, what's the point? So, we started doing short weekends and then longer weekends and it's like a muscle. We started building up a muscle, learning that, okay, something is going to explode while we're gone. Something that was working fine the day before we leave is going to break the day as soon as we're out of cell phone range, like, and then you just learn that those things are not the end of the world. And, you also empower your team to, figure out solutions. And so we've started doing more traveling in the last few years as we've stepped out of executive roles and more into strategic board roles. So we're we're kind of trying to make up for lost time. But I really do encourage people to, as terrifying as it is, to just go anyway, to just take a vacation anyway, because even if you're, find yourself answering emails for 6 hours a day, at least hopefully you're doing it from a prettier place with a better view
Yeah, and
than
I think it
day to
gives you,
day.
I think I agree, and I think it gives you a fresh perspective. Sometimes you've got to come out, step away, right? Like you need to step away, like, and you come out, you come back, and whether you've had a different cultural experience, or you've been up in nature in the mountains, like you've said, or whatever it is, you always come back with, newfound insights, newfound perspectives, things that might have been troubling you or there was issues prior, you solve them like just effortlessly. It's like when that flow piece comes into play, do you know what I mean? Like it's just that,
Yeah,
I
it
encourage clients
really,
to do the
it
same.
really is. It's true that like when you, like the physical distance provides mental space for new solutions to show up. And I didn't believe it for a long time, but I've experienced it often enough. Like, it's not that I was just such a control freak and I was hanging on to everything so tightly. I'm just like, no, it can't survive without me. And, but yeah, once you start doing it, you realize you get better ideas. You don't always have to be the one to solve it. And things do work more smoothly. So yeah, it's something we were late to learn, but I do encourage people to really make that a
Yeah,
practice.
I think everyone has their own journey, right? So you went late. It just took you as long as it took you to get there. Talk to me quickly just around the fact that it also reduces your mental load, so you have the ability to be more creative, be more innovative. So talk me through. Like you've been running the company since 2009. You've continued to obviously innovate, evolve, pivot. Like, what's that been like, and where is the business at this point in time in terms of from an innovation sense? Like because you would have seen over the time that new challenger brands come into play. Like and when you've been in the business for as long as you guys have been in, you would know when it's like, oh, that's actually like a concern, or no, like just let's just stay focused on the path we're on. Like, yeah, I guess it's about adapting as well, right? And like being
Yeah.
non-linear in terms of your approach is what I like to call it.
Well, our vision has always been big. We felt from the beginning that there was a global market for this brand. And while we started with our initial market was ultra runners, people who run distances longer than a marathon. So crazy people, basically. But then, they'd get a pair of our sandals and then we'd get an order from four people with the same last name. And it's like, oh yeah, that's my wife and my daughters. They said these were really sick and, they wanted them. And so we saw there was just this real interest. And so innovation for us has been about, we don't want our customers to ever have to sacrifice um, healthy foot experience because we didn't provide them with a shoe for the wearing occasion. So we always plan to have a full line of shoes, boots, and sandals like we do now. And moving in that direction has required us to bring in people far more talented than we are. So we got very lucky that through a serendipitous meeting of dogs, I mean, like two guys walking two dogs who didn't know each other, but the dogs knew each other, started talking. And anyway, one of those guys ended up becoming our chief product officer. And he was able to take our sandal and turn it into a ready to wear, and then come up with our first casual shoe, our first sneaker, and, our first uh, insulated waterproof snow boot. And so, we just kept growing in innovation by following customer demand because, again, when you're digitally native company, the advantage is that you have direct, immediate feedback from your customers
Yeah.
on like, hey, this is great. but I need something closed toe that I can wear to work. Or, hey, I work in the restaurant industry. I need something non-slip. Or, we were contacted by a woman in the WNBA who's a basketball player. And she's like, I live in your shoes outside the court. Can you make me something for the court? And to make a basketball shoe, something highly, highly technical in a very competitive space, I mean, that seemed impossible, but our product designer came from that space. He designed basketball shoes before. We had this woman saying, look, if you build it, I will wear it. And it took us 7 years, but we now have shoes in the WNBA and in the NBA on, significant players. I mean, that just blows my mind. So, it's taken a significant growth in our product design and development and manufacturing capacity in order to engage in that kind of innovation. There's no way 16 years ago, if you said you're going to make a basketball shoe, I mean, I might have said, okay, because I didn't really know what was involved in that. But once I discovered how difficult it was just to make a thin piece of rubber that where the right weighed the same about is the left, you realize just how incredibly difficult it is to manufacture physical products. And so you pick up the skills along the way. And to me, that's what a definition of an entrepreneur is. It's like my first business was in finance. My husband was a street performer and a stand-up comic. So he always jokes he was a telemarketer because he was on the phone all the time trying to book gigs. His real job was being on the phone all day promoting himself. And so we wore all the hats in the beginning, and then when the skills required outgrew our ability to reinvent that particular wheel, then we'd bring in people to fill those gaps. And we've been very, very fortunate to be able to do that and still be here 16 years later.
Yeah, it's such an amazing story. Gosh, what an amazing. Yeah, it's actually incredible. Like just hearing it, and you need to write your book needs you need to write a book on Xero Shoes. I'm sure it's in the wings. I'm sure it's in the pipelines. Like,
It,
or
it floats around in the back of my head, but I also know how much work that is.
or a documentary, like some sort of a film or a documentary would be
Yeah.
very, very cool. Because it's also like your business is also really social impact, right? Like it's not just like for the greater good. It's like it's got such a social impact footprint, if you like. What would be one piece of advice or a tip you would give to someone who is starting out in their first business, like in terms of as, this is their first go as being an entrepreneur? What would be a piece of advice you would give them or a tip?
Um, oh my gosh, that's such a big question. So you're going to be learning all the time. And it's really important to know your numbers inside out and backwards. A lot of people start a business because they're passionate about a particular aspect of it, whether they're a yoga teacher or, they want to manufacture something that exists in the world. But it's hard to put all the pieces together in a way to make a business profitable. And so you really have to know your numbers inside out and backwards, because you can go from profitable to unprofitable very quickly if you're not paying attention. And so, when I have the opportunity, I like to mentor employees in our company. And I always focus on teaching them about the numbers and how to understand the numbers and how to develop an intuition for the numbers so that, even if you don't necessarily understand about how all the parts of a balance sheet work, if you're watching it every month, or every week, you'll start to understand when things are looking off. So you develop that subconscious pattern recognition. So numbers is a really tangible place to apply that, but it's also experience it as well in terms of, building relationships with your employees, building your culture. And I think I really encourage people to think about the culture of the business that they want to have, because um, a lot of startups are very resource constrained. And so, maybe you can't provide free food for everybody, but what can you do? I mean, is it take people out for miniature golf, or just bring in pizza or whatever it is, just something to let employees know that you're thinking about them, you appreciate them above and beyond just
Yeah,
the paycheck,
I agree.
you know
Yeah.
and that you care about them. Even though I don't have an operational role anymore, I meet every single employee who joins Xero Shoes. I mean, from the warehouse to, on up, because to me, I've done all of the jobs and I don't take any of them for granted. And I think that humility is really important,
Yeah, I agree.
um, because if you start, you know, um, I mean, obviously, salaries for some positions are going to be higher than others. But if you forget that sometimes the less glamorous jobs are the ones that provide the most information and value about what the customers are looking for, then you can start to lose touch. So I think humility is always a really good quality to have.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I could not agree more. The businesses at times I go into where there isn't any sort of forecasting spreadsheet or anything, and I'm like, okay, let's start there, shall we? Let's understand cash flow.
Yeah,
The other thing
yeah,
I would say is just even having I mean, I have a business plan on a page. Like I have a template that I use with my clients where it's like, back to you putting it all together, like understanding the vision or the purpose and the mission, and what values, how do you put them in action? How do you create values that are in action and transcend through the business? And then that business goal, that financial goal, it's start there, I think is super important, like in terms of have a base, like have a foundation,
hmm
like is exactly what you're talking about. And then the qualities around humility, I concur. I could not agree anymore.
yeah,
Um, Lena, tell us how do we find out more about Xero Shoes? I'm pretty sure go to the website. But tell us your
yeah.
notes.
So if you're in the US, we're at xeroshoes.com. We also have Xero Shoes .eu, xeroshoes.co.uk. And in Australia, we have a distributor, and I don't know this one off the top of my head, but I think it's Xero Shoes dot something dot au. But if you search for Xero Shoes in Australia, you'll
You'll
find
find it.
Hamish's,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he was actually our first distributor. He's a really great guy, and he's been helping spread the Xero love down under since oh gosh, probably 10 years now. So
Yeah.
um,
Awesome. And then obviously we can find you on LinkedIn, and you've got a company profile on LinkedIn as well. It's
yeah,
been an amazing conversation, Lena. And yeah, gosh, I feel like we could just keep talking. There's so many different, like you said at the start or pre, like we could go this way or this way. But I'm so
yeah.
full for our conversation, and thank you so much. One final question. It's going to be an easy one, a quick one. What's next for Xero Shoes? Like, where do you see Xero Shoes? What's next? Without giving away all your secrets, or is that a big question?
Well, no, we our goal has never changed. It's just world footwear domination.
Love
We
it.
want Xero Shoes on all the feet. So I say world domination. Stephen will say intergalactic, but we'll get there. Uh,
So amazing. It's like you got the yin and the yang. Like, I love it. Like
yeah, yeah.
pragmatic, creative. Like it's all, yeah, it's so cool. Well,
But such a pleasure to speak with you. Honestly, this has been one of the most fun podcasts I've done. So I really
oh,
appreciate you
that's cool.
having me on, and just absolute delight. So thank you again.
No, Lena, I've loved it too. Like it's just been a good chat and just real, and it's good business, right? It's be good in business, do good in business, like, and then
Yeah.
you just never know where it can take you. So Have a wonderful evening. Enjoy those mountains for me. Yeah, it's summer in Colorado would be just beautiful. Yeah, so and then winter's also amazing as well. But no, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. You take care.
Thanks.